afternoon, everyone, and welcome. If I'm a little bit frazzled right now, we're starting a few minutes late. It's because we're having a little bit of technology glitches, and so we're working through that. And that's the worst thing that can happen when you're organizing a presentation, to be dealing with technology at the same time. So apologize for that, but we think we've got things under control, and we should be good for the afternoon. But if not, we're doing it. So welcome to everyone here today for, I think we're on our 14th Empowered Senior Speaker Series. It's great to see a room full of people, and it just underscores the need for events like this, and we're happy to be bringing these types of presentations to you for topics that you think will be of interest. And on your evaluation forms, there's always an opportunity for you to let us know what you would like us to cover at future sessions. Welcome to our first time attendees. How many are here for the first time today? Excellent. It's great to see our group growing, and welcome back to everyone that's here for sessions past. There we go with technology. All right. You're gonna be put to work over there. So my name is Marian Gord. I'm a real estate broker here in Burlington, and I specialize in later in life moves, working with seniors, and estate sales. And just over the course of my career, I've learned that lots of questions come up. I find that the people that I work with aren't always as prepared as perhaps they would like them to be, or that there's some gaps in the things that they've got on the go. And so that's how these sessions have come about. I've kind of got the designation. I'm called a Seniors Real Estate Specialist, but also a Lifestyle 55 Master, which means I've got additional training and experience in this field. So I'd love to put it to good use, and this is one of the ways I can do that. Next slide, please. Just also want to recognize and thank the educational partners who helped to make these sessions possible. Without them, it would be incredibly difficult, incredibly costly as well. They are all incredibly passionate, compassionate, caring individuals who also specialize in later life moves and working with older adults. So just by way of introduction, starting on this side, Jeanette Bach. Jeanette is with Fluid Senior Transition, so she pretty much helps anybody going through transition, and that's probably pretty much all of us. So if you have any areas that you need some help with, Jeanette's a girl to call. Beside her, Elizabeth Russen-Thibodeau. She's a relatively new partner, welcome. It's an offshoot of Bayshore Health. It's the Burlington Neighborhood Health Team, right? I've got that right? A very different and innovative health home care program, and so that's something that might be in your future. It's worth your while to speak with Elizabeth. Beside her, Grant Hooper, and I'm sorry I don't know your name. Sorry? Helen, sorry, first time we're not. They're from Chartwell, Oakville, and happy to have them here. So retirement home living, fabulous home in Oakville for people that you want to speak with. And next to them is Neela White. She is with Raymond James. I know the name. Blue, sorry, I got a lot on my mind. Blue Wing Advisory Group, but any of financial services or advice, Neela is the girl that you want to speak with. On this side, we have Sarah Sunnox from Smith's Funeral Home, also later end-of-life planning, burial planning, funerals, all that type of stuff. Sarah is very, again, compassionate, knowledgeable, caring, and will go above and beyond anything that you need her services for. And beside her, Meredith Joachim from Hearing Well Matters. So we all, at some point, may end up with some hearing challenges, and I can attest to their services. My husband has used some personal experience with them, and they've been great people to work with. Not here today, actually, we have Jared Sia from Quality Care Burlington, also another home care company. Kim Rutledge from Vistamere Oakville, a retirement home in Oakville. Rifat Talukter from Parkland Retirement Home in Ancaster, a new innovative concept out there that's going to be opening this fall. And Paul Cuttajar from Senior Care Access. Also, they have an online service directory for all types of senior care senior housing and care providers and service senior providers. And sorry, one more, Irene's yoga, 360 downsizing, so she looks after if you're in the middle of a transition or a move or any type of organizing, Irene can help you with that. So once again, I can't say enough about these folks. And if you haven't had a chance to visit with them before the session, then please do take some time and get to meet them. You never know when you're going to need somebody. I had a call from, or an email this week from someone who was planning to come today. She said that they were in Niagara Falls, her husband had a fall, and they're waiting for surgery there. So their life has been thrown upside down, and I would have to say that's a crisis. And without knowing who to turn to, when to turn to people like this, it really does exacerbate that problem. So make use of the people that are here, because we are all here to help you when the time is right. No one is here to sell you anything or to push any services down your throat, but just get to meet us and you won't be sorry to get so. I'd also like to acknowledge, sorry, the next slide please, Ida Gabuza and Lisa Villador, who are my right-hand ladies, and they helped us to get here today and get us all settled in the right place at the right time, so thanks so much. If you happen to sneak in one of that door or the back door and haven't registered with us at the desk, please do so before you leave, or you just write your name and number on a piece of paper so we can have record of who's in the room, please. And also for future registrations, I always do follow up with emails about sessions coming up, so I want to make sure that you are on my email list, my distribution list. And then also around parking. So we're at the Burlington Art Gallery, and we're on the honor system for parking. So again, if you've snuck in, we were asking that you pay $3 at the door for parking for this session and all future sessions. It's actually a deal, so you get to spend the afternoon at the art gallery for $3. Next, just a couple of housekeeping things. You do have notepads, and I understand that our presenters are going to be putting those to good use. So you've got some pens and notepads. The pens, if you're here before, you've heard me say it before, but if you're new, those pens, some of them have little nibs at the top of the pen, of the tip of the pen. So you may be trying to write with it and say the pen doesn't work. It actually does. You just need to take off that little nib. Please do turn your cell phones to silent or off so that we have as few disruptions as we can. And I understand our presenters are going to entertain the questions throughout the session. So don't be afraid to ask if you have something that you'd like clarification on. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide, please. And so today's topic, and that's why you're here, is about protecting your digital assets. This is probably a groundbreaking presentation for us because we've never covered anything like this in the past. And technology has made our lives easier, but also probably a little bit more complicated. And we've relied on this technology that now is online and digital, and entire generations are growing up never having used a checkbook, owning an address book, or even getting a letter in the mail. So this technology revolution has added new challenges and complexities, especially to end-of-life preparation. Unlike physical property, digital property and our online behavior are distinctively different. From online etiquette to preparing an individual's online account and app's contents to be discovered and managed as their wishes, some dedicated planning needs to be considered. So our presenters today, we have a dynamic duo. We have Lee Poskanzer, and he's been giving me grief since the minute he walked in the door, so don't let him do that to you. Would be nice, okay? Okay. Lee is the founder of Digital Death Clinic and the CEO of Directive Communication Systems, DCS. And he's been active in digital asset property succession management solutions. He successfully led product innovation change at several Fortune 500 companies, including American Express, Safeway, Polygram Video, Foot Locker, and others, helping to create new industry standards and practices. He's also appeared in various media, including the Toronto Globe and Mail, Wall Street Journal, NPR's Marketplace, CNBC, CNET, and he's instructed continuing education for lawyers, financial advisors, and accountants. And guess what? Now he gets to add the Burlington Art Gallery and the Empowered Seniors Speakers Series to his resume. Wonderful. Christine Brunsden is also with us, and you may remember her from a previous exceptional presentation on disability tax credits from last November. And if you weren't here, you have an opportunity to watch the replay, and I can tell you that the people that attended that session were able to take advantage of what they're learning and came away claiming disability tax credits and going back and getting tax credits retroactively for several years. Christine is the co-founder of Legacy U Inc., a company dedicated to overcoming the legacy procrastination effect through education, organization, and communication. With over 20 years of experience in life and legacy planning, Christine has earned multiple designations, including the Trust and Estate Practitioner, Elder Planning Counselor, and Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy. She's also a best-selling co-author of Emerge, Be the unmistakable authority in your field. She's passionate about helping individuals and families plan for their future, ensuring their wishes are carried out efficiently and effectively. Christine's holistic approach to legacy planning emphasizes purposeful living and prioritizing values and goals. So thanks very much for joining us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. Help me welcome these two gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. I'm in Poskanzer. I know I look like Christine, but I'm not. I want to thank you all for being here, and we're going to talk about digital property. Does anybody know what a digital asset is? If you know what a digital asset is, please just raise your hand. Good amount. Okay, with your pens and paper, this is the first part of the test. Write down what you think a digital asset is. Just take a couple seconds and just write down a few. Just what you think it is. Couple more seconds. All right. Does anybody want to share what some of the assets they wrote down, what they are?
Username, password.
A username and a password. Those by themselves are not assets, but what they get into is the asset. What, yes?
Photographs that we store on the tab.
Which-
Photographs that we store on the tab.
Photographs that are stored online or in a server. Yes?
Will.
A will, a document, that it could be a digital asset if it's saved in a file on a server or on the cloud. Anybody else? Yes? Any financial information accessible online certainly is a digital asset. Anybody else? Yes?
Social media.
Social media, those accounts are all digital assets. Anybody else?
Email.
Email, who said email? Email is absolutely one of the most important digital assets you have. Anything else? Yes?
The device itself, which is linked to the airways wirelessly.
Absolutely, the device itself, so your cell phone, your computer, your Kindle, those are digital assets. Anything else? How about a text message that you send to somebody? How about the video calls that you did maybe during COVID when you kept in touch with friends and family? Those are all digital assets. In the US, and I'm going to refer to the US quite a bit because a lot of our content providers are based in the US, and thereby, and we'll go through this in a few moments, thereby US law is applicable to what we do here in Canada. US law is any digital communication or file that another party has an interest in. So if I text you the letter M, that's a digital asset. If I send you pictures via WhatsApp or Instant Messenger, all of that is a digital asset. Now that we have a better understanding of what digital assets are, I'd like to take a couple seconds and have you write down what you think some of your personal digital assets are that are not confidential. So what you think your digital property may be. I'll give you a hint, it could be your email account, would be one.
For more hits, you might want to just look at your phone at all the different apps and go, oh, yes, all of these.
More seconds. Okay, does anybody want to tell me the number of accounts that they came up with? Anybody? Did anybody come up with just one? Anybody come up with two? Did anybody come up with three? Do I hear four? Do I hear four? We're going for five. Do I hear five? Okay, we got 10. I hear 10. Anybody got 15? Let me tell you, the average person today has over 200 accounts. I was with a lawyer, this is years ago, whose client happened to be a friend of mine, and she asked me to come in with her, and she was 70 years old at the time. And my friend asked the lawyer about digital assets in her will. And the lawyer said, come on, Susan, how many do you have? 3, 4?
Oh my.
And I said, let's time it and count. She came up with 87 accounts in 2 minutes.
Wow.
People forget, your utilities are online. So your telecom, your heating, your water, you're paying that all online now. She came up with her VRBO and Airbnb to rent her place out that was down in Florida that had a whole new set of utilities. She had 5 email accounts. She was single, so she had a couple dating accounts. It starts to add up. And why is this important? Because digital property holds your very valuable sentimental and financial information. It holds your pictures. It holds poetry. It holds memories. For me, for example, my mother's voice, who passed away in 2010, is captured on a voicemail system. And me and my brothers will listen to it once in a while. That's a digital asset. That's important to us. I have an uncle who is a World War II vet, lived in Fredonia, New York, which is outside Buffalo. He has 12 websites of World War II historical artifacts, videos, and other documentation that is currently being used by the State University of New York. When he died, if he didn't have a plan for that, the state university system would have lost those educational tools, and students would have lost the ability to capture those important moments. Nobody would have thought about it. That was a domain name that has value, 12 of them. The artifacts within all had to be distributed. Those are assets. The educational access is an asset. Right there, just 12 sites have over 27 asset values. We have to think about what we want to do with them. And before we go much deeper, and I'm going to get ready for Christine, we have to think about what are the controlling factors, because they're not like physical property where you can say to, I have a house and it gets passed on to my nephew or my son or daughter. It's not like a car. How many of us are aware that we sign the terms of service agreements every time we get a new website or a new app?
How many read them?
Yeah.
To the end. When you're accepting a new app, you read through the terms of service, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna, it's funny you say that. There was research done by University of London, the one in England, and one in the east coast of the US, where they took college students and they created a fake social media site, and in terms of service agreements, had a clause in there that by enrolling in the site, you gave up the rights to your firstborn. Less than 1% of the students caught that. You know how many children would have been passed on? A lot. And my mother probably would have been passed beyond the reality of the So they're very important. And we don't do that right now for physical property, but we do for digital assets. And that contract, that terms of service agreement, is a contract that remains in force even after we die. Now, Canada has a little bit more liberal of approach when it comes to those contracts, but the US is very rigid. And because most content providers are based in the United States, they have to adhere to US law. Lastly, I will say there's also privacy laws and fiduciary access laws that we'll touch base on in a moment that also impact that you don't have with physical property. I can't think of the last time I signed a privacy agreement for my car when I purchased it. I didn't sign a terms of service agreement, but that's coming. Just wait with autonomous vehicles. So with that, I'm going to introduce Christine. She's going to start off by talking about how people step into the other people's shoes after we start to handle an estate. But in digital property, you can't always do that. And so, Christine, I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. You said stepping into people's shoes, and it's not just on death. Sometimes we step into people's shoes when they're still living, and their health span hasn't met their lifespan, and they've lost capacity. And all of a sudden, we're having to step into somebody else's shoes, and it depends on how well you've prepared for someone to step into your shoes. And I always say, had I thought ahead enough to think that you were going to step into my shoes, I think I would have left you slippers rather than stilettos. Slippers being the more comfortable environment to walk in than stilettos, where it could be a treacherous journey. You're already grieving and so many other things, and now to walk in high heel shoes during that may not be so comfortable. So I think we need to do a whole lot more to try and plan and help people who are going to have to navigate this quagmire for us later on. We have to do so much more nowadays than we ever did before because life has become more complicated and we have more and more digital assets. As Lee said, most of us average 200 of these accounts. So go to the next slide. We're just going to run through today just a little bit about what is digital asset planning. I'm going to give you some facts and statistics that might stun you. Give you some best practices on inventorying your assets, what to do, what not to do. And does anybody think that leaving behind a list of logins and passwords is a plan? Raise your hand if you think that's a plan. Wow, we've got some work to do. Okay, and then we'll give you a bit of a 5-step process on what you should do. Because I can tell you already, just based on what we said, you know now that that's not a plan. Okay. So as we continue more and more throughout life and we're accumulating more and more assets and our lives become more and more digital, this should make you acutely aware that your digital footprint is only going to continue to grow. So would you rather start now, or would you rather wait and kick the can further down the road and procrastinate, making your job harder as you get older? I would say probably starting earlier, and it's not something where you sit down and you do this all in one shot. I don't know anybody that's going to sit down. That's too daunting for many of us, but work at it over time. It's not a static thing. This is a constant, because we're constantly adding new applications on our phone. We're constantly adding new assets all the time. So this is not a static process you do once. This is a lifelong planning exercise. Go ahead. Okay, so digital asset planning, what is it? Why is it even necessary? Go ahead. I don't know how well do you all think that you have prepared for someone to step into your shoes, do you think you're even 10% prepared? How many think they're 10% prepared? Okay. How many think they're 50% prepared? How many think they're 100% prepared? Okay. So if you've ever considered what it would be like to step into somebody's shoes when they're not around anymore, how many people in the room have actually been an executor of an estate in the last, say, 5 years? Raise your hand. So not as many. Okay. I can tell you that the job of an executor years ago was much easier. Why? Because when someone passed away, you would go into the home, all the bills were coming via mail. You could redirect the mail, you would get a lot of clues as to the assets out there. You could, go into the CRA account, you would get a lot of clues there. You would wait for stuff to come in, you can review statements and all kinds of things. You would be able to rifle through drawers, find a lot of different things. But now, when you walk into an estate, you find this. Oh no, I have no password to get in. That's a problem. Yep.
That's just the beginning. Because if you don't have the password to get in, you have already issues in the first couple of days. And I'm gonna pepper Christine's presentation with some actual real stories. There was a woman whose husband passed away during COVID because she couldn't get access to the phone, and Apple prevented her from getting access. They would not give her any information how to unlock the phone. She was unable to invite her husband's family and friends to the funeral because we don't have address books anymore. Everything's in the phone. And if I don't share my password to my phone, the few instances where you can use passwords is to get into devices. If I don't share that with my wife, she can invite friends that she may not have the contact information to because we always use my phone. So something as simple as just helping to plan the memorial and the funeral can go down the tubes because you can't access this 5-inch by 3-inch computer. So, even something simple.
Thank you. This is why I bring him, because he's seen all of the good, the bad, the ugly. We can just carry on to the next slide. This is what I think of when I think about digital access planning. It's like a maze. I'm trying to work my way through a maze, and when I'm stepping into somebody's shoes to help with a power of attorney or an estate, which I've done, I think the estate will a little over 100 times at this point, and power of attorney trustee a little over 1,000 at this point. But I can tell you that the process is difficult already, and then to navigate when you're having to navigate the digital landscape nowadays, it's inherently more difficult. By implementing these best practices, you're going to give so much more confidence and access to people that you're giving them a playbook, if you will. Whether you do it as a digital asset binder, whether you use some of these online planning tools that are out there, it's important just to get started and to start doing it and to make it a normal practice. We do taxes every year. We should make this part of our every year practice, just to bring these things up to date, or even more often, depending upon how prolific your use of the internet is. But by doing so, you protect your legacy and you minimize the risk. And there are lots of risks, and I think Lee can talk about some of those risks of assets. I know there's a lot of business owners in the room today, and I'm acutely aware of that, and I'll tell you a bit of a story. You want me to tell the one about Sick Kids? Sure. Okay. So for Sick Kids had a web domain that they were using, and somebody inherently forgot to attach a credit card and renew that domain. So what happened was, when it came up for renewal, it didn't get renewed, it went to the open market. Oddly enough, a cannabis company picked up that domain, and they were going to use it, and then somebody realized that this domain had gone missing, and and they went back to the person who had bought the domain and said, you know, it says sick kids, we'd like the domain back. Luckily, the person who bought it was kind enough to give it back to sick kids, otherwise they would have lost that domain. But some of these domains can be worth money. If anybody, does anybody have like a GoDaddy account? Because on GoDaddy, they actually show you when you buy a domain, and everything you go to, when you put an address in the address bar, that's a domain, right? So when you're typing in www.bell.ca, that's a domain, right? And so they give you, if you have an account where you hold domains, especially GoDaddy, they tell you what the value of your domain is, and some of them can get very, very pricey. If you've ever bought a domain, you can see that some of those domains are very costly to purchase as well. The fewer the number of words, the more expensive that domain can often become, because those are now, anything that are smaller domains, they're now really hard to get, and some words are really costly to get in the course of a domain, so they're actually very expensive. I've seen domains cost well over $100,000.
I've got a friend who's got one over $1 million. She bought it, yes.
I don't understand. Good. Exactly the concept of domain, how it has happened. I don't understand it. You want restating.
So the question that was asked is, I don't quite understand what a domain is and why it would have a value. So anybody that owns a website and it has an address that you go to get to that website, when you type in www dot whatever that is, let's call it, give me some notes here.
It's called lead.com. Lead, that's me.
Right.
Just in case you forgot, it's me. So lead.com is a domain name. It's what you put in the address bar when you go visit a website. It can also be your email address. So if I have lee@lee.com, I may not have a website, but lee.com is the back end to my email address. That is a domain name. Yes. And so they can acquire great value. So I have a friend of mine, she bought her initials back in the 90s. Genius. She doesn't do anything with it but her email. And it's only 3 letters. It's her initials. It's worth over $1 million US. Now, if she were to pass away and nobody knew how to renew that domain name, it would go back into the pool the day after it expires, and someone would pick up a domain name worth $1 million for about $4.99. It's a pretty good investment. Yes.
And there are people that do that. They just troll looking for these domains and they pick them up when they've expired.
Yes.
Some people, this is their entire, not their entire, but some people, this is part of their estate plan, is to go and pick up domains and trade domains on a regular basis.
Why does somebody want to buy the domain?
Commercial value. Because
Why is it important to buy it?
let's
The
take,
number of hits that domain gets.
it could be the number of hits, it could be the meaning of the business. Let's say the name BurgerKing.com has a vast value to Burger King, the corporation, so that people know where to go to find how to get 2 Whoppers for $5 on Wednesday. Not that I know that that's a promotional special. Just saying. Yes.
I have an email with 3 letters. Is there any way for me to find out if it has any value?
The best way is what Christine referred to, is look at GoDaddy.com. There are professional brokers that buy and sell domain names, and they can represent you if you want to sell it.
I'll give you an example. I own a domain that is www.metaversechristine.com, and that domain is worth $835 today. Not by any stretch of imagination huge value, but it has some value, and my thought is that it would probably increase over time. Why did I buy it? Because I knew when the metaverse came out that it would have some value, and I just thought, I'm just gonna pick it up. Because I thought it was fun.
Another question? No? Okay.
Why
The question was, why was my friend's initials important? Value meaning to her or to the organization that wants to buy it?
To whoever, like is it IBM or something?
Exactly. It would be something like that where a company wanted to use those initials so that people can remember. Again, it's all about cognitive resonance.
Yes.
They can remember 3 initials more than they can remember ABC television commercials.com. So hers was 3 characters, very easy to remember. The last one ends in the letter M, which is very common, and people like that. They can remember it. So corporations want to buy it.
I had the same name, and I canceled it, I gave it back before. Did you go back after it yet?
It really depends on the market value. If it's something that's common, people would want it, yes. If it's very, very specific, then probably not, because there's going to be a limited number of people that place value in that name. Well, they'll give you an idea.
You can go play around. You can go on GoDaddy and you can put in anything you want and see what comes up and decide whether or not it's something that you want. Not that we're suggesting that.
Yeah, that's it. This is a disclaimer. We are not financial advisors, nor do we play any on television. But
It's a conversation we have with Neela.
Neela might be able to help you. Yes.
So when you die, do you have to include that in your assets?
Absolutely. That's a great question because it is an asset. And you have to go one step further. Because if my domain name tell me if I'm taking up too much time. If my domain name subscription, we don't actually own them. We lease them from GoDaddy or domain.com or Network Solutions. We lease them. So if my domain name expires on January 1st and I die on December 31st, and that domain name has a value of $1 million, maybe GoDaddy gives me a 90-day grace period, but my estate's got 90 days to find it and renew it. And that's about it, because then it goes back to the pool.
Remember that all of your bank accounts and your credit cards, unless they have a joint holder who continues to live on, they're all gonna be frozen at death. And you may have it attached to a credit card, and that credit card has now been frozen, so when it comes up, it doesn't come off the credit card. But how long is it gonna take for your fiduciary, either your power of attorney or your executor, to get a copy of all your bank records and go back through your records for an entire year, because it only renews once a year, right? So they're gonna, if you don't record all this somewhere, they're gonna have to go get all this information and scan through all of your records for 1 year to find out what everything is that's coming off your credit cards, your bank accounts. And don't forget, some things when they come off, it comes off as some Ontario numbered company. I used to deal with Global Pet Foods, and that's how my pet food came off my credit card. So nobody would know unless I told them, you see this transaction on a regular basis, don't worry, it's just dog food. But please do feed the dog.
And I'm going to change the subject just a little bit. In that same vein, we have to worry about our medical supplies and our healthcare supplies. Because if my caretaker is purchasing everything on Amazon on my credit card, and that caretaker passes, who's going to step in and know what item numbers to purchase? Who's going to know what items to buy or when I need them? There's a lot of issues related to digital assets and expiration dates and access of information that we have to include in our estate plans, and if not directly in the estate plans, in some form of documentation that will lead those who are important or will have designation to find the important matters that need to be distributed. So, yes.
Are there people that specialize in, say, forensic excavation, forensic permission of some kid who hopefully not because the person themselves, if you may not remember everything or something. So if there's some way of forensic, go through it, summarize it for the remaining person.
The issue is about.
Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry. The question was about forensics, for somebody to be able to go look backwards and identify digital property from a backward point of view. Be able to say, oh, they had this account, they had that account, I found that account, etc. The problem with relying on forensics is it's only gonna be related, first of all, to the servers that you have access to or what's available publicly on the internet. Two, privacy matters still come into play. I may know my Gmail account exists, but that doesn't mean I can get access to it. So the forensics can only go so far, and there's not a lot of companies that do it because, particularly again, based in the US, a lot of the laws are written that that's considered private matter and not to be turned over.
You brought up a good point, and it's really important for you to understand that there's no intersection between fiduciary law and privacy law. Just because you pass away doesn't mean that you give up your right to privacy. I may have an account that I do not want my spouse to know about, and for that very reason, it is why all the social media accounts and the other providers immediately say in the terms of service, number one, you're accepting the terms of service, you cannot share your login and your password. By doing so, and I enter with your credentials, now all of a sudden I'm opening myself up to a lawsuit of impersonation, right? And maybe that person didn't want me to see the contents of that account. So there's these two different laws that are kind of acting, and they're not acting together. So just because you pass away doesn't mean that you give up all rights to privacy. You still have your privacy. You're gonna have to give someone the ability to enter in and give them an idea of what things you want them to be able to get access to and what things you don't want them to get access to.
I'm gonna go two directions if you don't mind. First of all, this is a very good-looking crowd. Let me just say there's a very good-looking crowd. Do any of us have pictures of us being sexy stored on a cloud or a server? Right? Anybody? Nobody's got any right? Because there are people who have compromising images or have sexy letters in their email that we may not want discovered, that we may not want to grant access to, because they're private. They're between me and maybe the other person I share them with. And so we don't always have that connection that Christine was talking about. Fiduciary and privacy are two different things. And we have to be very careful about saying, I want somebody to see everything. In addition, not only is impersonating an account holder dangerous, it can do a lot of damage to your estate. Let me give you an example. I have an Amazon account. I'm a Prime member. I give my password to Christine.
I'm going shopping.
This is a true story. I die. Christine goes shopping 10 minutes after my death, gets $20,000 worth of goods delivered to the house the next day, picks them up. My estate has no idea. They're still just trying to get my death certificate. Let's try another one. Christine, I give to my password to Facebook. Christine and I get in a fight, and she hates me. I die. She's got access to my profile and puts on there, Lee is a loser, and he hates this group and he hates that group. Now my legacy is destroyed. My kids are upset because they can't do anything about it. There's reputational disparagement that can happen. There's a lot of damage that people don't realize can and will happen. In New Jersey, Vanguard, does anybody know who Vanguard is? Yep. Right? The person, one of the managers, watched the accounts of deceased people. After a year of no activity, went in, stole $2.3 million US. The estates never knew about it, and the only way he was caught, his brother-in-law turned him in because he wasn't getting a big enough piece of the pie. If the brother-in-law didn't turn him in, this guy would still be doing it today. Impersonating an account holder is a dangerous tool that you do not want to rely on. I'll pass it back.
We'll go on to the next one. Okay, I want to give you two terminologies because I think it's important to understand the difference. A digital asset, we talked about what that was and we asked you to kind of write down what your thought was. A digital asset actually doesn't have a universal definition, if you can believe it. However, they are electronic records that represent memories, money, records in digital format instead of paper. And a digital legacy, in contrast to a digital asset, the term digital legacy, as you see here, refers to digital information that will still be available online after someone's passed away. And that will include things like their LinkedIn profiles, their dating profiles, their Facebook account, crypto assets, things like this. And these are all gonna leave a lasting picture of who you were. And you get a chance to talk about and give people direction about what that'll look like. Next slide. So these are all examples. We talked a little bit about what were your digital assets, and we heard people shout out different answers today about what they thought were digital assets. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but a good list of different accounts. Things like loyalty and reward points, those are digital assets that people may not think about. I don't know, any online gamers here? No, okay. So there's all kinds of assets, as you can see, that would be captured under a digital asset, and like I said, that's not exhaustive.
I'm gonna ask any digital online gamblers, because that's becoming a big thing in Ontario. Okay, I'm gonna, you wanna go to the video now? So one of the things about digital property that's dynamic is it's always changing and evolving. And while you may have very limited access or desire to be online, there are new technologies coming every day. And in the last few years, there's been something called AI, or artificial intelligence. Has anybody heard of that? Okay. How does that apply to you? Now, it applies very well to business, lawyers, doctors, etc. Well, how is that going to apply to you? I'm going to give you an example.
We can't play the video, but you can explain it.
So, a number of years ago, does anybody know who Steven Spielberg is? All right, good. More people knew AI than they did Spielberg. Very interesting. So Steven Spielberg invested in videos to record Holocaust victims and survivors. And the purpose of this was that they would be recorded in a three-dimensional perspective. Their voice would be captured and their intonations would be captured. Those videos could be projected in 3D, like a holographic image from Batman days, and they could be played, and then individuals could ask that image a question, and it would answer as if that person is in the room. So a high school student in New Jersey could ask a person who is now deceased a question about their experiences in the World War II, in the Holocaust, and that image would respond as if they were having a conversation. Why is that important to you? Because, like every other innovation, starts out as maybe something historical, maybe something that's really creative, used in a very big manner, but it comes into commercial use. And soon, and it's already starting, where you'll be able to record it in your home, and your great-great-grandchildren can ask you questions about your life. And you'll be able to control what you say and do, but the answers will be done through artificial intelligence. Now that imagery and that usage can be, you need to make a declaration or consider it, if you do it, what you want to have done with it. And as I predicted a few years ago, and now lawyers in the United States are doing this, you want to also limit the rights of that image. For example, and I'm saying this just to show you how dynamic digital property is. Because now that image could be used in political campaigns, and has been, can be used to support products that you may not believe in. And again, this is a very sexy crowd. It might be used in adult films. I'm just saying. But the idea is that you don't necessarily control what happens unless you get it down so that you can maintain how you want your digital legacy of the internet. Because your great-great-grandchildren may not know what to do, and they may look at the commercial value and sell that rights to that image. You're gonna see California in probably the next 10, 15 years opening up casting agencies with our images. Think about it, they don't have to pay union wages, they don't have to feed us. I've never heard of a video needing lunch, right? And they'll have total capability to manipulate it to look like the way we do. So it's not always just what the digital assets are that you see now, but it's also what you have to think about next month, next 6 months, next year, next 5 years. Because we're always changing, we're always growing, and we're always adding new assets to our portfolio.
Speaking of that, this is old, I wouldn't even consider taking this out, but I thought it was relevant. These stats are from 4 years ago. Surprising me to know that there are 1,031 photos uploaded to Instagram every second, or that there are 1.8 now, probably well over 2 billion websites worldwide. 3 million emails sent per second, that was 4 years ago, right? So there's a lot of digital property out there. Next slide.
We're all using it. Everybody today now has some type of digital property.
So I picked up these interesting facts. I thought, it would be interesting to know that we live here in Canada, so on a per capita basis, actually Canadians spend the most amount of time online at any country in the world, logging an average of 43.5 hours per month.
That's crazy.
Okay?
That's a full-time job almost.
Right? And then among seniors, the use of seniors between 65 and 74, the use of the internet is now at 80%. So 80% of seniors 65 to 74 are using the internet. Social media platforms have actually been around for a relatively short period of time. However, by 2130, we're going to have more deceased people on Facebook than living. That will totally skew Facebook's entire strategy because their whole model was ads, and I don't know, last time I looked, deceased people weren't buying anything.
Well, if somebody had the password, then
Well, unless we're talking about that. And this I think was very interesting too. So the first ever pizza purchase was made using, the first ever purchase made using Bitcoin was 2 Pub Job pizzas back in 2010, and the buyer paid with 10,000 Bitcoins. And that now, the same value of that would be like using $370 million. So that's kind of
those
shocking.
are some expensive pizzas.
Yep. Gold crusted, I don't know.
Pepperoni.
Next
Does
slide.
anybody own Bitcoin in the room? Or any other cryptocurrency? Does everybody know what a cryptocurrency is?
And this was according to a YouGov polling of over 1,000 Canadians. So 67% said that what happens to their sentimental digital possessions after they passed away is fairly important or very important. 35% said that the digital possessions with monetary value, such as cryptocurrency, were either fairly important or very important to them. And we've heard all kinds of stories about cryptocurrency having gone missing because somebody didn't write down the seed phrase, et cetera, et cetera. But nearly half of the respondents in this poll, 49%, had made absolutely no plans for passing on all of their digital assets in the event of their death. So 67% say it's fairly important or very important, but yet only half of them are even making plans for that. And of those who made no plans, 57% had not even thought about it, while 20% knew that they should, but had just not gotten around to it, and only 16% said they did not know what to do. But I think that number is probably higher. There's a lot more people who don't know how to do this, and so we're going to quickly run through how to do some of this. And 5% of respondents had actually used any existing digital legacy tools. Did anybody know that there's existing digital legacy tools out there? Very few. Okay.
Can I throw in one more stat?
Yep.
Almost 40% of lawyers that were polled a few years ago would recommend password sharing to their client to get for access to their digital assets. Of that, I'm sorry, 60%, 40% of that knew they were doing it, knowing that it could lead to criminal liability or be ineffective. So that's 1 in 4 lawyers would recommend something that they know is either going to lead to criminal liability or be ineffective. So even those that we're turning to for advice and knowledge may not be fully aware of the ramifications of some of their advice. This is an emerging industry. There's a lot going on, and it's hard to get all the answers. What we recommend today, tomorrow could be invalid. I doubt it, but you never know.
I've known this for some time. I'll tell you, there's a website out there that talks about being end-of-life planning. They went crazy valuation in a very short period of time. But I thought, I'm gonna get on here and just see, I'm gonna work my way through planning my digital assets accounts with, all of my end-of-life planning with this software. And I got to the digital assets part and it said to share my logins and passwords, and I said, oh my God. I immediately shut down the account and I called up the CEO and said, I want every instance of this account deleted. I don't want this out there because I know for sure this is gonna be a bad plan. And I thought, how can a company like this that has grown to a $40 million valuation in a very short period of time be suggesting something that is offside? So you have to be really careful about what you're reading out there on the internet about how to do this planning, and make sure that you're in connection with, in contact with the right resources on how to do this properly without getting yourself into any hot water.
Yes.
I don't quite understand when you're talking about like our passwords and stuff like that. It's okay to be giving it to your executives so that they can access, but what about that privacy?
So the only password you should be passing on are the passwords to get into your cell phone, your computer, any hardware. If you need them to get into a device like that, you can certainly, and you should be, giving the password to get into those hard devices. Everything else is probably completely offside with the terms of service agreements that you accepted when you set up that email, or when you went on online banking. And did you know, many people do not know this, but if you were to give your bank card and password, or even write it down in your wallet, and you keep your PIN code, if there's a loss in your account, the bank will not cover you. Right?
Trying to process the sharing of the guy, agree given your significant other password to your phone. But everything you said about taking on someone's identity, as soon as they enter your password into your phone by your debit, they are impersonating you.
Correct.
Are you not advocating that risk? That everything else you do after that is them use your password.
Right. So because a device is hardware and it must be in somebody's hand, it's acceptable to use the password, like turning the key to a car. You can't. No. This is the way it is. However, because we don't sign the terms of service agreement for the computer or the phone, it's a device that is covered in your estate. It's when we have a terms of service agreement, because we have a contract in place where we have private information, that's where it becomes complicated. So, and the trick, this is where it gets very gray, because the trick is the person has rights to access the device, but not the apps on the device. So they can get to the files on the device, but they can't go into the cloud, which is really, you have to trust somebody at that point, right? You have to trust them. And by the way, many terms of service agreements have the process for getting and again, I'm gonna make this very clear, the disclosure of the account contents. Notice I didn't say the account access, because what the site owners will do and the app owners will do is they will take your data from, let's say, a dating site, or iCloud, or Google Docs. They will take that data, those documents, they will put them in a separate file, put it up to the cloud, and then those that you designate will be the only ones to be able to access it. They will never go online and be able to impersonate you. So the site owners have a plan. They're gonna just data dump everything in the cloud, give somebody 90 days to go pull it down, and then it disappears forever. So the disclosure of the account contents, and you'll never hear me say access to the account, it's the disclosure of the account contents. And that's where the difference is. And I know we're running out of time, so one of the things, the key thing to going up to how do you avoid the password question, because I think we've done a good job presenting the problem. How many people are scared out of their lives? Right? Okay, we haven't provided a solution. It's like trick or treat. We're gonna scare you, then we're gonna give you the candy. Hope nobody has diabetes. So the key is the site owners need the username, and then the estate's gotta tie the username to you, the account holder, to your wishes, when you made them and what you would like done with them. And then prove that you're passed away, that you're dead. Those are the 4 elements. So your username tied to you, the account holder, tied to your death, tied to a clear direction or directive given or provided to them. Those are the 4 elements. And in the US, and now in Saskatchewan, coming soon to Ontario near you, is the fiduciary access laws. And those are the steps that are able to grant and circumvent the privacy matters, grant access to the contents. Yeah.
So, the username can be varied throughout the entire phone or device, depending on the account, you can have 100 usernames.
Correct. That's why it's so hard. Because let's imagine I have Facebook, and let's say my name is Lee Post, that's my alias. Poskanzer is way too hard. When we grew up ordering pizza, nobody ever said Poskanzer. Post, P-O-S-T, much easier. So there may be Lee Post, there may be 20 of us in Toronto. How does Facebook know which one passed away? The username.
So unless we give instruction to the people who are looking after all of our applicants' documents, it is illegal. Well, see, even though you're giving your password to those people who are going to be looking after your accounts after death, it's still impossible, or it's still illegal for them to go into any of those accounts beyond getting into the phone.
Correct. And that's why you don't want to think about passwords. Don't even think about it. Because if the site owner is based in the United States, they'll see the IP address, they'll shut it down. They'll say, wait a minute, answer these security questions. And if they don't get it right, mayhem will ensue. And I'll give you an example. Google had an incident in Denver, Colorado, where the family couldn't remember the password, tried several times to get in. Google's security department looked at all the attempts and said, wait a minute, this is a hacking link. So while the family was grieving, the police showed up, looking to arrest people for trying to hack into Google. So it's the usernames, not the passwords.
Lee, can you just repeat the question?
Oh, sorry.
Many times there's no necessity for a username, there's no additional provision to put in a username, it just asks for an account.
Typically, the question was using the username that there are hundreds somebody might have, because it could be an email, it could be a phone number, it could be an account number. And how do you do that? And what do you do about the passwords with it? Do I have that correct? And now we have, what about account number? Account numbers, the username, whatever it may be, whether it's digits, a name, or an email address, is the identifier to you, the account holder. Because that's your way, as you're alive, that's your identification for getting in. It's matched with the password that you use to get in. So you want to make sure you can identify that this is the right person, and then you tie it to the deceased and then the other elements as well. And that is the way you get access to the disclosure of the account contents.
So, Lee, can I just ask you a question? So, are you saying that the best way of dealing with this is creating a list, essentially, of all of your social media accounts, things like that, putting your username only, not any information about a password, but just so there's a list of, that's my username, or that's the email address that I use for that particular account? Is that what we're? and
Give
I
me
think
one sec, because we're gonna run through this really quick. I'm gonna go through each and every type of different digital asset and a tip for how to deal with
Great,
it.
that's what we need.
So let me just say the question that Christine is gonna address, which is, should someone create a list of just the username and the accounts with that, not including the passwords? Christine is gonna give some tips, and then I'll jump in also on that.
Okay, we'll touch on this really quickly. There's something out there called ghosting. It is taking over somebody's identity after death. It happens all the time. It's very prolific in the US. There's no stats I could find here in Canada, but just from what I'm reading online, it's just as a concern here as it is in every country. This is a lot of times how the progression of identity theft occurs and what you can do to mitigate it. So you can notify any relevant organizations, monitor your credit reports. That should give you some indication about what's going on, who's accessing your credit, if there's anything that's, new credit files being opened, that kind of thing. Securing your personal information, limiting access to your personal information, hiring a service to make sure that you're protected, your identity is protected. There are various different providers of those services. And then to also be very cautious about the information being provided in an obituary. Okay, we'll go through the best practices. Really quickly, how many people in this room have a will and powers of attorney? Hold your hand up. How many of those, keep your hand up. How many people's wills, powers of attorney are up to date? I just pulled a towel on myself. And how many of those that still have their hand up have a digital asset clause in your will? How many don't know if they have a digital asset clause in their will? Super important. Okay. Next slide. So there is pre-planning for email accounts. Lee and I have talked endlessly about this. I would say, your first line of defense is to get a will, keep it up to date, and make sure you've got a digital asset clause. That's what's going to give any fiduciary who's stepping into your shoes the ability to deal with your accounts. But there are some options out there that are pre-planning options. There's a word of caution around that. You can use some of these pre-planning tools. It's just make sure that if you're updating your will and you've got a fiduciary named, an executor named, a power of attorney named, that your instructions within your email account are the same person, or it's somebody different. You tell your executor about it, but make sure you keep these things. It's probably best that it's your executor, and keep these things up to date. You don't want somebody else having access to these accounts that is not the executor, because there could be important information, and maybe your daughter Susie and your daughter Jane don't get along after death, and you've given Jane the access to that, and she says to Susie, no way, I am not going to give you that information. Now all of a sudden we've got things that are going missing.
I'm going to tell a quick funny story about that. So there was a man who accrued a great deal of money in his Bitcoin account. And Bitcoin requires special access to a specialized security password. What he did was, in his will, he said, My son gets the money, the value of the Bitcoin, but my daughter has the password to it. Or the access to it. Kind of cruel, but I like it.
Okay, next slide. Okay, for social media platforms, there are some. So Facebook does have a feature that will allow you to tell. And so first of all, identify the person who's going to be able to give instructions. Not necessarily get into all of your stuff, but to give the instruction to Facebook about what you want. And there's a way of putting in there what your wishes are. And you can either have your account completely deactivated, then you're not going to be one of these, more people with deceased accounts on Facebook than not, or you can have it memorialized. And I think we've all seen some of these account memorializations. You know somebody who's passed away and their account becomes memorialized, so you can still leave messages on the profile, but you can't get in to look at all of the old photos and things like that.
And LinkedIn has that same option. Twitter has that same option. And there are just a handful of others that offer also a memorialization. So it's not something that's always available.
Okay, next slide. Okay, how many people have used any of these things? Zoom, WhatsApp, all of these communication platforms. So for these ones, there could be valuable information locked within these apps. It could be communications going back and forth with people. Maybe you communicate with your customers. Maybe you have a business and there's clues as to revenue that needs to be collected in there. There's all kinds of things that you may need to access these things for. So again, making sure that all of your valuable or important content is backed up and that you give access to the right people and that you explore any pre-planning options they may have today or may become available in the future. Next. Then you've got your household IT communication and management accounts. These are things like your internet access to your home and other connection devices. It could be like your internet provider delegating responsibility to someone that will come in and be able to access those accounts. And that you're giving the necessary authorization and documentation for them to be able to handle all of your account holdings and matters with that provider.
Okay. Does anybody have their house wired up for voice activation on, let's say, security or their heating system? A man lived in California. He passed away. He had his heating system based on his voice. When his wife went to go turn on the heat a cold night, she went without heat for 3 days in the mountains during winter. So something as simple as your heating system now is now digital. And we have to think about that. And it's only going to become more pervasive. It's not going to stop. More companies are going to be pushing this kind of technology.
Voice activation, eye scan, all of those things will become more and more prolific as we go. Okay, we're done. Password managers, Lee, I want you to tackle password managers because I know that you've delved deep into that.
Okay, so first off, does anybody use a password manager? There's Google, there's 1Password.
Authy.
Yep. Exactly. So here's the problem with them. There's usually a master password that you need to make sure you give to somebody, because that will provide potentially the information of the different accounts you have. And that is extremely important because the password managers are so deeply ingrained in security and technology that without the master password for somebody to access the account and speak to a customer service rep, they can't provide anything. There was a young man who lived in Tennessee who had his password manager back up in Toronto. Now he had everything kept in his password manager, and I mean everything. So when his wife went to go find the accounts, she contacted 1Password up here, and they weren't able to help her. She got a privacy lawyer that I helped her find, who then attempted to get the password manager to go into the logs They said, we can't do it. Sorry, we have no access to even information of the sites we visited. Her income stream stopped, her revenue stopped for the businesses that he was running. There was no information on bank accounts in the US, unlike here. There are no centralized repositories for banking information. So all the banking information was lost, all the pictures, all the videos of their marriage, everything was gone. So the password managers are great while we're alive. Legally, they act as our agent while we're alive. But when we pass away, they now become the system or catalyst for account holder impersonation. Their job is limited. They may lead you to believe that they can help after death, but watch the wording. They'll never say they allow it. They'll just say, here, this will help. You have to be very careful. So password managers are great while we're alive. Just be careful of when for post-passing. Yes?
What if you're in a situation like that business owner?
That's very different. That's a great question. The question was, what happens if the person is still alive and let's say they're in a coma? There's very different laws regarding this in your terms of service agreements as well. Because then somebody is acting on your behalf as incapacitation, which is very different than death. In that case, the incapacitation laws and the rules set forth by the site owner will take over. So it's very different. Yes?
What happens with facial recognition?
What happens with facial recognition? That's a really ugly question. A young man was murdered in California, and he was in the funeral home, in the coffin, where the police thought, wow, maybe there's evidence on his phone. So they went into the funeral home during the family grieving, opened up the casket and tried to get the fingerprint, tried to get the retinal scans. Do you know how many class action lawsuits are now against the LAPD? Nothing you can do because it's all based on the movement of blood. So if there's no movement, they can't get reads. So it's locked down. It's all based on the blood that flows through the finger. It's a very, very, the future is really going to be fascinating. And it's really, the biotech, the biometrics are really going to be interesting. Because fingerprints, if you saw, or if you have a cut, could screw the whole thing up. Now what's interesting to me, I'm going to get a little personal. I'm both American and Canadian, as you can probably guess by now. I don't know if you know the giveaway, my accent, very New York. So I still have my Citibank charge card, and they recognize me by voice recognition. Now 2 years ago, I had a stroke, and my voice has changed quite a bit. Christine can attest to that. It used to be much higher. Again, much sexier. I'm part of the crowd. But with technology, they were able to recognize my voice based on the intonations and the way my accent was. Technology is a fascinating thing. When it works, it's great. But when it stumbles, it's horrible. I mean, just look at what happened in Toronto, what was it, a couple months ago with Rogers going down. Something simple. Or even a couple weeks ago with the security company that went down. It was felt worldwide because of a simple coding error. We are all going to be victims of this going forward, whether we like it or not. It's the reality. The only thing we can do is be as prepared as possible for it. You have to think ahead, not just here and now.
All right, 2 minutes.
Yep.
Marion, we're gonna step it up. Okay, online asset inventory management apps and accounts. Again, you're gonna have to record the things that you have somewhere. I developed my own organizer, it's 25 pages long. That kind of scares a lot of people, but I always say, don't tackle it all at once. And, well, I'll do a little bit of a survey at the end, but I have an idea of how to actually get people to do this work. But I'll ask you all later at the end if you think it would work. So again, carrying on to the next one.
Next slide.
Next slide. We all have cloud-based applications, platforms, data storage. There's hard data on drives, and there's also, you want to make sure that if you do have data on the cloud, that you're backing that data up on a regular basis. You're reviewing the terms of service and making sure that the policies that are there ensure that a fiduciary has access either on incapacity or death, as they said, it's different. Just make sure that you're reading through those terms of service and making sure that you've accommodated for whatever it is that online account provider gives you access to. Carry on. We've got digital photos, video provider services. We've had people on Facebook passed away, parents of a child. The Facebook photos were on there, they just wanted access to it. They logged in, and again, they were charged with impersonation. So it's not good enough for that. You want to make sure that you've got these things. If you want to pass them along, get an external hard drive and put them on an external hard drive and give that hard drive to somebody specifically. Because remember, hard device is different than online assets. Carry on. We've got a whole bunch of funeral, legacy, pre-planning account services, 23andMe, genealogy, all those things. They can all be online accounts, and it depends on, do you want somebody to have access to them? And if you do, you're going to tell somebody and make sure that you've got the right access being able to be given to them. Or maybe they're just there's just files in your computer. I have lots of family members who do a lot of genealogy just in regular files. So making sure that somebody has access, again, to the password to get into there, and you tell them it's in this file, and so this is what you're looking for. Blockchain assets, crypto assets, this is something that exists out there, and there's not a whole lot of it here, so let's carry on. We've got digital assets, online accounts associated with hobbies, and all kinds of other things. We want to make sure that we're recording these things. We'll do the next one. We've got hardware and software management. That's another digital asset. Carry on. And I've got here some tips for managing any sort of online accounts that provide access to financial information and liability information. Again, Marion, maybe you and I can do something where we can send information out, maybe the copy of the deck or something. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then there's some tips for managing some of your online payment accounts and things like that as well. We also have online content, Netflix. Anybody subscribe to Netflix, YouTube, and things like that? These are all things, it's not automatic access, and you don't own the content that's there. So it's not just, you can't just pass that content along. We've got online shopping, we had talked about Amazon accounts, things like that. Loyalty rewards, so anybody has PC Optimum points, things like that, that's covered under these types of accounts. We've got the household management accounts. These are all things that you may need to have access to for a fiduciary walking in who needs to manage your home after you've passed away. And I'm saying the 5-step process very quick. 1, just start thinking about your assets. But every time you do something, start thinking about those assets and the end. Number 2, think about your loved ones and what's important, right? And start talking to people. Start talking to the people that it's important for them to know what your wishes are. Take action. Make sure that you've got up-to-date documents. Keep on top of these things. And number 5, keep talking. Don't let this stuff go without being said, without being communicated. If you have things that are important, start there. Start with your assets that are most important. I think we can kind of just forget the rest. It's all part of that 5-step process.
I'm just going to compliment what Christine just said. Think about the important assets first, the ones that are going to be most important to your estate and your loved ones and your heirs. Secondarily, we think about the ones that may not be as important, right? Your bank account, your retirement account, your pictures and your videos, your email, probably going to be the most important. your dating profile, your account to purchase postal stamps may be secondary or tertiary. So you want to tackle the ones that are going to be most important to those you leave behind. Then you can consider the rest. The other thing I would say is think about the people that you're going to designate the disclosure of account contents to. One person cannot do it all. If you've got 10,000 account files in your cloud-based storage, you may want to have 2 or 3 people have access to the contents because they may not be able to get to things in time. It's overwhelming. I can't tell you the number of executors and loved ones who say, I give up and walk away. And imagine if they gave up and they didn't find a financial account, or they didn't find a very important picture, or important artwork that maybe you created. So you want to think about those who are going to be best to handle the matters. Otherwise than that, I'm going to leave you with this. Think of the password sharing as like a toothbrush. Everybody has one, but nobody wants to share it. That would, anything else?
No, I just think, how many people now think that this is impossible to get started? They have no idea how they would even tackle this.
I just want to ignore.
And I think that's why we need to do better, because that's gonna be the challenge for most people, is they walk out of here and there's no one guiding them in this venture. And, you know, the lawyers do a good job with creating documents and things like that, but they're not the ones helping you through the practical aspects of this planning. So how many people would show up to an online event if there was wine delivered to your home and you're doing a wine tasting and we're tackling this one at a time and over a course of a number of weeks or months? Done.
How many of you want us to show up at their house and walk you through everything? How many are willing to pay $1,000 per visit?
$1,000 amount? Per visit. Oh, per visit, okay.
It's good, I'll take it. Chicken Papa Josh is coming.
So thanks, Christine. I don't know the rest of you, but I really had a huge awakening here. And I think if we all can come away with just recognizing the importance of dealing with these accounts, and as you said, it's not something that can be done overnight. It's going to be a bit of a labor of love, but just to make sure that our heirs, the people who we care about are protected and you're protected. Even if you don't mind, just the next slide, please. Keep going. Oh, there we go. So again, plan carefully. That slide is on my presentation every time, and so here again, that message has been underscored 1,000 times. Next slide, please. This session is being recorded, and it will be available on the Speaker Series website, which is empoweredseniors.ca. So that is a domain. I purchased that. Somebody wants to buy it. It's for sale for a lot of money. So all the videos are there. That's where you can find it. But I will be sending out at some point a link to the video. It does live on YouTube, but it's also available here as well on this website. In that section that says reports, there's also some valuable documents there. So if you haven't been to the site, go and have a look and see what you can dig up.
Is that where the slide deck from today will be?
No, actually, I could post the slide deck in the reports section, but when I send out the link with the replay, I will include the slide deck. Okay, so anybody who's been taking pictures frantically, just rest assured that you'll be able to have access to the slide deck. Diane, you had a question back there?
No.
You okay? All right, next one then. Eva, please, yep. So once again, thanks to these folks here, because they helped to make all of this happen. They helped to bring in ideas, people, connections, and funds, quite honestly, funds to help make this happen, because it's not something that I can manage on my own. So thank you all very much, and please do make use of their services. That's why we're all here for you. The next session is September 11th, always the second Wednesday of the month, September 11th. We're going to be talking about medical assistance in dying. So I'm not advocating one way or another for it, but again, just like this, it's important for people to know and understand what this is all about so that you can make informed, intelligent decisions and what those types of decisions that are right for you. The presenter is Sandra Andrzejczyk. She presented, I think it was in January of this year on healthcare plan. She was talking power of attorney and things, but she's an ethicist, she's an RN, she's got vast experience in this, and she's the person that will give you the straight goods. So I expect that this topic is going to bring out a fuller room. So please do register. We want to be prepared. We want to make sure that there's enough seating, that we're not screwing at the end to make room for everybody. So please do register if you plan to attend. And also just those evaluations, please do fill them out. They're important to us. It's important that we get some feedback. And also, if you're not getting emails from me, we've got a problem. So please, if you're not, check with Ida and Lisa to see what we've got on file. Also a phone number. I think I've got pretty much everybody's phone number, but just make sure that our records are up to date. Okay, thank you so very much. I hope you had enjoyed today.